Welcome back to another episode of Wrong Sports, and for the next couple of videos, I am going to be delving in to Division III college football. If you don't know what Division III college football is, it is 3 steps below FBS Division I football. Most schools, if not all of them, do not give out athletic scholarships, and the NCAA does give out national championships in over 24 sports at the Division III level right now. And in the next couple of videos, I am going to be going over Division III college football, some of the greatest coaches, some of the biggest, and some of the most interesting events that have happened in Division III college football. And in this first episode, I'm going to be going over the greatest coaches in Division III football history. But before I start this list, make sure as always you subscribe to the channel below. Also make sure you like this video and share this video with other college football fans. And you can also check out my Patreon. You can check out my podcast and my social media links in the description below. So just a heads up, most of these coaches on this list are mostly from after 1970. So you're not going to be hearing a lot of coaches from before then. I'm only going to be going basically to when Division III was created in the NCAA. In 1973, the NCAA would create Division III football after they split up the divisions into the divisions that we have now. College football used to be only 2 divisions, the University Division and the College Division, and then they split that up into Division I FBS, Division I FCS, Division II, and Division III. But let's start out the list with number 10, with Frank Girardi. He was the coach of Lycoming College in Pennsylvania for over 30 years. And Girardi ended up at Lycoming College after coaching at the high school level in New Jersey and then being an assistant at Lycoming before getting elevated to coach in 1972. And before that time, this school only had 2 winning records in the last 15 years, so he had a lot of building to do, and it accounted for 3 losing seasons to start his career. But after that, he went on a streak of 27 years of winning records, and he also won his conference, the Middle Athletic Conference, 15 times, whether that means the division title or the conference. And because of that, he would lead Lycoming College to Division III tournament 11 times. They weren't invited all the time because the Middle Athletic Conference wouldn't send 2 teams. They had 2 divisions, and most of the time the conference would only be able to send 1 team. But along with those 11 D3 tournament appearances, they also went to the Stag Bowl in 1990 and 1997, and his best team was probably that 1990 team when the team went 12-0. They beat Hofstra, who were the top team in the East, and then they also had to borrow shoes from Penn State. That was because Lycoming College didn't have the right shoes for the Hofstra turf, and they ended up beating them with those borrowed shoes, so that's a famous story. The team would end up, though, losing in the Stag Bowl in overtime, and that was the closest that they would get. Frank Girardi coached from 1972 to 2007. He has a record of 257, 97, and 5, and he was also the 5th winningest coach in Division III history, and that is why Girardi is number 10 on my list, mostly because he didn't get that elusive national title. If he would have gotten that, he probably would have been higher on my list, though. Next on the list at number 9 is a coach with kind of a strange name, but aside from his strange name, he would lead Widener University through its name change and 2 national titles during his time at the school. His name is Bill Manlove. And Manlove would come to the Pennsylvania military colleges in 1969. That was what they were called. They would then change their name into Widener University in 1971, and he would lead the team through winning seasons all but 1 year, his first year when they went 2-7. But after that, he would win 180 games in the next 22 seasons. He won 10 Middle Atlantic Conference titles, but due to the conference titles, he would lead the Widener University college football team to the Division III tournament 7 times, and he would do a lot more winning as he would then lead the team to 2 national titles in 1977 and 1981. That is why I have to place him above my number 10 coach. His best stretch with Widener was during the time when he won the 2 national titles, which was 1972 through 1982, as they went 8-1 or better, and they won 10 or more games 6 times during that stretch. Coming in at number 8 is a college football Hall of Famer and a legend out of Ohio. His name is Dave Maurer. And Maurer was a player at Denison College in Ohio before moving on to be an assistant at Wittenberg College, also in Ohio in 1955. He would end up staying at Wittenberg until 1983, as he would be an assistant under another College Football Hall of Famer in Bill Edwards, and then became the head coach in 1969. And Maurer would immediately assume head coach and then not lose for over 2 years, as he went undefeated in 1969 and 1970, but his best stretch would be after 1973, as the team in 1973 would go undefeated and then win the Ohio Athletic Conference Championship game, one of the few conferences and actually one of the first conferences to have a conference title game. He would then win the first ever Division III national title tournament, which happened in 1973. It would only have 4 teams, but they were one of the 4 teams to get invited and end up winning. And after that first Division III national title, this team would pretty much be unbeatable, especially in the regular season and in conference play, as he and Wittenberg went to the Ohio Athletic Conference Championship game every year from 1973 through 1981, going 5-3-1 in those games. And through the 15 years at Wittenberg, they won the OAC 8 times, and they went 67-5-1 in regular season OAC play. But along with this, I mentioned the national title in 1973, and they would do it again in 1975. They also went to the Stag Bowl in 1978 and 1979, and I have a funny story about that 1978 team, as they would go undefeated and would play Baldwin Wallace in the OAC championship game, and that game would end in a tie. That is why they have the record of 5-3-1 in OAC championship games. It happened against Baldwin Wallace in 1978, and the funny thing was both of these teams would win both of their games in the D3 tournament and meet up in a rematch in the Stag Bowl, and where unfortunately Baldwin Wallace would beat our Wittenberg team here, ruining Wittenberg's chance at 3 national championships. But Maurer would coach Wittenberg for 15 seasons. He went 129, 23-3, including being 9-2 in the Division III tournament. And that is a big reason why I have to put Maurer on this list. Also, another reason was they were the first dynasty in the OAC. And like I said, one big one's going to be coming up later. But let's move on to number 7, to the coach that reigned over the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Association before Wisconsin Whitewater would take over. His name is Roger Herring. And Herring played in college at Wisconsin La Crosse in the mid-1950s when it was called La Crosse State College. He then went on to coach at the high school level for 10 years, including winning 79 games. He then went back to his alma mater in 1969, where he would end up coaching for the next 30 years. And while Herring was at Wisconsin La Crosse, they won 15 Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Association Conference title games, and yes, try to say that 6 times fast. They also finished in first or second 24 years out of 31 seasons, which was incredible. Also, the WIAC was a part of D3, but also didn't send teams to the D3 tournament all the time, so due to that, Herring wasn't able to go to the D3 tournament until late in his career. He first went in the mid-1980s, but they went a lot more times in the 1990s, and I'll mention that soon. Herring, though, would end up going to the NAIA tournament 7 times, including winning it in 1985. They would also go to the D3 tournament 7 times. They had a record of 13-5, including winning the Stag Bowl in 1992 and 1995, and he ended up with a record of 261, 75-7, and like most of these coaches, he did a lot of winning and a lot of his best seasons towards the end of his career, and like I mentioned, that was also when they were able to be invited to the D3 tournament more. And after looking it up and watching some highlights, their best team was probably 1995, as they went 14-0. They beat Mount Union along the way, and that was Herring's second and final national title. And fun fact, an assistant on that 1995 team was Brian Gunekertz, who was a former player for Herring until an injury where he became an assistant, and now he's the GM of the Green Bay Packers. And now coming in at number 6, he is 3rd in wins in Division III football, and many people might not know about him. That might be because his school had an enrollment of just over 1,000 students in a town with maybe 10,000 people in central Iowa. His name is Ron Schipper. And Schipper coached at Central College in Iowa for 36 seasons, and while he was there, he would go 287, 67, and 3. He never had a losing season either, which is pretty incredible, and it's one of the few things on this list that no other coach can say. Only my top 2 coaches, I believe, can say that. And because he never had a losing season, he finished 3rd with the most wins in D3 football history. He did have a lot of winning in conference play too, as he won the Iowa Conference. It's now known as the American Rivers Conference. He won that conference 18 times, and he finished 1st or 2nd in the conference 29 out of 36 years. And even though he won the conference half the time he was at Central, he only went to the D3 tournament 12 times. He did win a D3 national title in his first try though, as he won in 1974. In the 2nd year of the D3 tournament, they would go to the Stag Bowl 2 more times later in his career, but they would not win it. It's also kind of tough to pick a best team for him, but he did have a great stretch from 1984 to 1990, where his team won 10 games or more every year, and they went to the Stag Bowl 2 more times, like I mentioned there, not winning it though. And now we are in the top 5 with a coach that you probably know about now, especially if you watch Division III college football. He's a pretty big name now, Pete Friendenberg. And Coach Friendenberg is a well-known name now because of what he did with Mary Hardin-Baylor. But before he came to Mary Hardin-Baylor, he was a well-known assistant throughout Texas, mostly with Baylor, Division I Baylor that is, before he became the coach of the new football program at MHB. And Friendenberg would have only 2 bad years. Those were his first 2 years, as they went 7-13 total, but they were a brand new program, so that was to be expected. After that though, Friendenberg and Mary Hardin-Baylor ruled over their conference, the American Southwest Conference, from 2002 until now pretty much, because they won it every year but one. And along with that, Mary Hardin-Baylor has been to the Division III tournament 20 years in a row, a streak that is still active. Plus, along with that, they went to the Stag Bowl 6 times, winning it 3 times. But Friendenberg, like wine and like all of these coaches on this list, got a lot better with age and made this program into a monster as he reached his retirement. From 2016 until 2021, his team only lost 2 games. They won 3 D3 national titles with 4 Stag Bowl appearances, and 2018 was probably their best as they went 10-0 in the regular season, scoring over 50 points in 7 of those games, plus they scored 80 points or more in 3 games, and had a 92-point performance to start out the year. Then when they got to the D3 tournament, in their first 2 games, they averaged 50 points per game in both of those games, and only gave up 15 points total. But in their final 3 games, they had a murderer's row of the best D3 programs ever. As first, they beat number 3 ranked St. John's, Minnesota in the quarterfinals, then played number 4 ranked Wisconsin Whitewater, beating them to get to the Stag Bowl to play number 1 ranked Mount Union. And Mount Union would take an early lead, but then Mary Hardin-Baylor dominated in the second half to win 24-16 and win their 2nd national title. Friendenberg would retire after the 2021 season and after winning his 3rd national title to ride off into the sunset with a 231-39 record. He has 19 conference titles, including 17 straight to end his career, and he would only lose 5 conference games over his final 21 seasons, which is another incredible stat. And coming in at number 4 is a coach that many people might not know about because he retired about 2 decades ago, but at the start of Division III in the 1970s, he led this team to be a national power. His name is Jim Butterfield. And Butterfield would coach Ithaca College in upstate New York for 27 years, and he started by assisting at Colgate and his alma mater, Maine, through the 1950s and 60s before becoming the coach of the Ithaca Bombers in 1967. And Ithaca went through conference affiliation changes throughout Butterfield's time, as first they started as an independent until 1972, before they joined the Empire Athletic Association, which is now known as the Empire 8 Conference, until 1990, when they became an independent again. Throughout his time though at Ithaca, he coached the team to a 206, 71-1 record. But a big reason why I'm putting Butterfield in the top 5 is because he set the stage for what other D3 colleges would have to match in later decades. He did something that not another team did for another decade or so, and that was lead the Bombers to 11 D3 tournaments and making it to the Stag Bowl 7 times. Only Mount Union would match and pass them. Ithaca also is one of 4 schools to win 3 national titles at the D3 level, as he led them to the title in 1979, 1988, and 1991. And making the tournament in the 1970s was pretty difficult since the tournament only invited up to 8 teams, and Ithaca would make it 5 times from the first tournament in 1973 through 1980. Plus, they made it to the Stag Bowl 4 out of the 5 times they were invited during that time. But Butterfield and Ithaca were their most powerful in his last 10 seasons, as the team went 94-20, winning the Stag Bowl twice and winning 10 or more games in 5 seasons. And now we're in the top 3 with another coach that we have to wind back the clock to find out more about him, but he has a record that no other team has been able to match. His name is Bob Reed, and he coached at Augustana in Illinois for only 16 years, but he managed to do something that no other coach or college has been able to do or match. But before that, he started as a high school coach in the Quad Cities area and did well enough to get a college coaching job at Augustana in Rock Island, Illinois in 1979. He would go on to coach for 16 seasons, only losing more than 2 games in a season 3 out of the 16 years he was there, with 2 of those being in his first 3 years, so this guy never had a losing record. Along with that, he made Augustana the first dynasty and the first team to beat in D3 football, as Reed would coach the team during an amazing 60-game unbeaten streak that spread out over 4+ seasons with 4 national titles in a row. That is something that Mount Union has not been able to do, Wisconsin Whitewater has not been able to do or match. It started in 1983 and ran all the way until December 1987, as it was broken in the D3 tournament. Along with that, Reed won his conference, the College Conference of Iowa and Illinois, 12 out of 16 years, and he was unbeaten in conference play from 1981 until early 1988. He had a total record of 112, 12-1. And because they were so dominant, they got invited to the D3 tournament 1981 through 1989 and also in 1994, going 19-7 in the playoffs, going to 5 Stag Bowls in a row. They were the first team to do that, and for about a decade they held that record. Okay, if you are a D3 football fan, you know anything about Division III football or really anything about coaching records, then you might know who I'm going to probably put in my top 2, but you might not know what order I'm going to put them in. Well, coming in at number 2, it's probably going to be a little controversial, but I'm putting John Gagliardi at number 2. He would have the Division III Heisman Trophy named after him, and he has the record for most wins, as he would coach for over 60 years at St. John's College in Minnesota. But the reason why John Gagliardi coached for so long was because he knew he was going to be a coach. He knew that all the way back to high school of senior year when he was a player coach, and he would continue to coach the football team through college, quickly becoming a head coach of a college football team at age 22. As he would coach Carroll College in Montana, he coached there for 4 years, going 24-6-1, and he won the conference 3 out of 4 years. So this guy was good from the beginning. At age 26, he would find his forever job, as he would be the head coach of the football team at St. John's in Minnesota, and he took the job after the previous coach, the former NFL player in the 1940s and 50s, Johnny Blood McNally, told him that no one would be able to win here. Well, he would prove him completely wrong, as he would have only 2 losing seasons out of 60. And along the way, he won 2 national titles at the NAIA level within his first 15 years, as he won it in 1963 and 1965, and then the team would battle for the D3 title starting in the mid-1970s, and they went to the tournament and won it in their first try in 1976. But Gagliardi would only get better with age, as his best decade came when he was in his 70s, as in the 2000s this team would have winning records every year. They would have 7 Minnesota Intercollegiate Athletic Association conference titles, and they went to the D3 tournament every year but one, including winning the Stag Bowl in 2003, beating Mount Union. Gagliardi would end up winning 27 MIAA conference titles, and his record at St. John's was an amazing 465, 132, and 10, bringing his official career coaching mark that includes Carroll College to 489, 138, and 11, giving him the most wins by 80 or so, and making it really hard for anyone to reach his wins no matter what level you're at, because you gotta coach for at least 50 years or so to reach that level. And here we go, my #1 coach in Division III football history. This guy is going to be my pick for the greatest D3 coach ever, and he could probably be in the top 10 greatest football coaches of any level ever. It is Larry Karras. And Larry Karras started his career at Mount Union as a quarterback from 1967 to 1970, and in his senior season, he led the team to an 8-1 record. It would be their best record for another decade or so. He would come back to his school at the age of 25 to be an assistant and work his way up to being the athletic director of the school in 1985. It would be only a short time later that he would become the head coach of the team in 1986 and immediately start with an undefeated record and getting the team to the quarterfinals of the D3 tournament, which was only the second time the school had done that. He would end up coaching at Mount Union for 27 seasons and would only lose 24 games. Yes, he coached longer than he had losses. And I want to add that 10 of those losses came in his first 4 seasons of coaching. He would go on to dominate the Ohio Athletic Conference as he won the conference 23 out of 27 years, including winning it in his final 21 seasons. He coached Mount Union to only lose 2 conference games from 1992 until 2012. Just to add on to the crazy stats of his, he only lost 8 conference games throughout his entire 27 seasons, and from 1994 to 2005, his squads won 100 consecutive games against Ohio Athletic Conference opponents. And I mean, this guy has some crazy streaks as well, as he led his team to the Stag Bowl 15 out of the last 17 seasons he was at Mount Union, winning 10 national titles during that time. He won 11 total titles and went 77-12 in the D3 tournament, something that probably no one will be able to reach unless they go on some crazy streak like this again. Another tough thing is picking a best team for him because he had so many amazing teams. He won 11 national titles, so it's tough to pick. I'm gonna pick 1997 only because this team scored over 750 points. They gave up just about 120. They beat every opponent by 4 touchdowns or more. No one got really close at all. They won the Stag Bowl by more than 50 points. They were so dominant this year. But this was also a stretch where they won 54 wins in a row from 1996 to 1999, and then followed that up with 55 wins in a row from 2000 to 2003, meaning this team went 109-1 during that time. They won 6 national titles out of 7. And Larry Karras would retire after the 2012 season, and his son Vince would coach the team from 2013 to 2019, winning 95 games and only losing 6. And through that time, Larry was the athletic director, so if Larry would have stayed as coach, he would have had 427 wins against 30 losses, which is just sick for the Karras family, as they have won 92% of their games at Mount Union. Along with that, Karras coached tons of coaches and players, some famous players like Pierre Garcon and Cecil Shorts, and he also has some coaches that he coached, like Matt Campbell, the coach of Iowa State, and Nick Sirianni of the Philadelphia Eagles, both played under Karras. In addition, his son Vince Karras would leave Mount Union, as would his father in 2020, and Vince is now the defensive coordinator at Toledo under another Mount Union alumni, Jason Candle, so there are more Mount Union alumni everywhere because of Larry Karras. So there you go. There is my top 10 greatest coaches in Division III football history. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Tell me who you think I'm missing. Tell me who you think I should be higher. Or just tell me what you like about this channel and what other teams, events, or just anything you want me to cover in Division III football in the comments below. As always, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share this video with other college football fans. And you can check out my social media, my podcast, and my Patreon in the description below. And stay tuned for more videos about Division III teams, coaches, conferences, and events in the near future.